guys, Jennifer here from Riggs Creek Farmhouse, and today I'm going to do a simple video for you on how to get started with gardening for beginners. This video is going to be super simple. I'm going to teach you all the tips and tricks that I've learned through the years with gardening. All of these tips and tricks are perfect for a beginner gardener or someone who maybe has gardened and they're fairly new to it and they just want some good advice to help get them started this year. I did not grow up gardening, or I did not know anything about homesteading. I learned through the years, and with trial and error, I found things to work very well for me. The funny, interesting thing is I bought my homestead years ago and had my garden, and it was thriving, and I learned and I grew and I experimented and learned how to do all of this on my own. I didn't grow up with any of it. And through the years, my life got busy with babies and other things, work and whatnot, and I found myself loving and getting back to what I originally did when I first bought my farmhouse. So I know these tips and tricks work because, like I said, I did them years ago and stopped, and then I defaulted back to them, and I actually enhanced on a lot of them, and I'm going to share them all with you today. So give me a thumbs up if you like gardening videos, or if you want me to do more gardening videos. And if you enjoy any videos from me and you want to join my community, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions about gardening, let me know in the comments below. I would be happy to share my knowledge with you or lead you in the right path so this year you can learn to grow your own food, fruits, vegetables, and even flowers. We're even going to talk about a little bit about flower gardening as well. So it is a little windy here in Michigan. It is cool. It's early spring. It's very cool out. So we're going to bundle up, try to get as much as we can to get started. And I'll have a blog post to accommodate this video with all of the breakdowns. So make sure you check that out over on my blog, which is www.riggscreekfarmhouse.net. All of it, like all the time, will be linked below.
Okay guys, to start a simple garden does not have to be hard. First things first, like anything that you are starting new, is do your research and a lot of planning. I advise you to go ahead and sketch out your plans or write out your plans on what you want to plant this year. Remember to keep it simple. Don't get too overwhelmed. Right now, I'm kind of going through all of my seeds to decide what I want to plant now and fill in any gaps of seeds or plants I need to order this spring for my beginner garden. Also, I highly recommend just reading the backs of your seed packaging, because you can get a lot of information from there as far as how much sunlight they need, where to plant them, how to plant them, etc. And I would always store the empty envelopes or the empty little picks that kind of describe what you're planting in a binder, so you can always refer back to it throughout the season. Another tip when you decide to plant a garden, plant only the things that you and your family are going to enjoy, that you know you're going to consume. Such as, if your family loves green beans, that's a great vegetable to plant. But if your family hates green beans, don't plant them. You can always experiment later on as you get more familiar with what you're growing and how to grow everything. Also, know your zone. I'm in Michigan, so my zone is about 5B/6. So we're kind of in between. We're more of a zone 6. Know your zone. Do your research. I have tons of gardening books that I've picked up literally at Salvation Army or secondhand stores. There's magazines out there. There's also tons of resources on the internet for you to look up. So I highly recommend doing that and getting to know the vegetable, herb, flower, fruit, whatever you're growing this year. And like I said, start small. Don't get overwhelmed. You can always add new varieties of things the following season. I always plant things my family enjoy, and then I experiment every year with some new things. Now it is time to survey and evaluate the land in which your homestead is on. So this is a perfect time to get outside and see where the sun rises, see where the sun sets, see where you get the most sun, the most shade. This is going to determine where you're going to plant certain things. For example, my tomatoes like a lot of sun, and they like to be warm. Most tomatoes do. So I don't want to plant it in a very dark area. However, a lot of my lettuce, my kale, things like that, like cooler areas. So right here, as you can see, I am actually going to be expanding my garden. Over here is where my garden was last year, and I'm going to expand my berry patch and add a lot of fresh herbs this year. So I'm just kind of deciding, and I'm sketching out how I want to do my garden this year. I'm also going to be adding a lot of fruit trees this year. So I'm just giving a good look. And like I said, I've gardened before and stopped, put a halt to it because my life got a little crazy with illnesses and kids and all that. And I'm back at it. So I am still learning, still growing. I consider myself still a beginner. And as you can see, you want a garden that's very rich and grows a lot. It is spring here, early spring, and I have a lot of weeds and a lot of things to do in these garden beds. Another thing I want to give you a tip about, make sure you carry a journal throughout the whole season. We're still early enough in the season for you to do that. You want to record in the journal what were some pros and cons about garden, what were some successes, some weaknesses, things you can improve on, some strengths, and all of that good stuff. So make sure you journal throughout the season so you can have more information for next year to become more successful. And trust me, if you don't write it down, you will not remember. So as always, this is the beginning of the season, and you want to make sure if you have any existing flower beds or vegetable beds, fruit beds, etc., you want to go in and kind of clean up all the weeds and things that are not going to serve its purpose. A lot of your farm animals can do this for you, but if your farm animals don't have access to the areas in which you want to grow things, then it's up to you to do that. So just get those garden gloves on and go ahead and clean out those areas to the best of your ability. And then also check with your zone to know what needs to be trimmed or pruned. Berry bushes and some of my flowers need to be trimmed this time of year. So you may want to evaluate on your homestead what needs to be trimmed up, what needs to be planted. This is a great time to plant trees and bushes and shrubs and things like that. And another tip before you plant any seeds or any plants, make sure that you either stake off or mark off. You want to make sure you know what you're growing, because I've often found that I've grown things in certain pots. If you're choosing to grow this year in garden beds or pots, because you can also do that on your patio or deck, make sure you label what you're growing, because I have often forgot to do that. And then I look back and I have no clue what I just grew, especially in the beginning, because you're still getting familiar with the flowering and the leaf and the texture of the plant. For example, like mint, different varieties of mint or parsley and cilantro, they can look very similar, and you can be very confused. So make sure you always label, and make sure you always stake off for tomato plants. Tomato plants grow up tall, they're very strong, but they need nice stakes to keep them held upright. Another tip is know your last day of your frost date. This is going to be helpful for very sensitive plants such as your pepper plants and your tomato plants, because you don't want to plant those too early, especially if they're full plants, because they will die, they will wilt off and die. So here I'm planting some of our berry bushes, and I wanted to talk about transporting. Make sure when you transport anything that the hole in which you transport is double the size of the root of the plant. So if your plant is, say a foot circumference, you want to make sure your hole that you planted in is about 2 feet circumference. Then always, when you transport your plant into the ground, to give it a good watering so the roots can get very established into the ground. There are so many great tools to help you garden. There are some beginner tools that I highly recommend. A good pair of gloves for sure. I will link all of my favorite tools over on my blog, which is www.riggscreekfarmhouse.net. So make sure you check that out, because I do have links of some of my favorites, and I have things that are most important for beginning gardening. You don't need to have all those fancy supplies. So go check that out, because I think it's going to be extremely helpful. Also, make sure throughout the season you always check for pests, especially if you're organic gardening. So I'm just checking for anything that looks peculiar, like bites in the leaves and things like that. Make sure you know how much rain your fruits and vegetables need. And then also, my secret is composting. Make sure you start a good compost, and this is basically getting rid of all of your table scraps. That means only vegetables, fruit, some coffee grounds, tea bags, and things like that. There's a whole list of different things you want to compost with some good dirt and some leaves. You need a certain moisture. Here I have a composting bin, but I started out with 2 empty garbage pails with tiny holes drilled at the bottom of it. You want to give it a good stir, and you also want to rototill this in your garden beds, because it'll enrich the soil so much.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you got some tips and tricks to help you get started with gardening. Trust me, you guys can do this. Let me know if you have any questions. Start simple, start small, and then you can always go from there. Now, what I have shown and talked about a lot today is what I've learned through the years. This is not my first time, but I'm still very new and I'm still learning about all of the tips and tricks. And I figured I better share this now before I get too advanced, because I want to touch base with you and be real to real with you on how easy this is. You can do it. Have faith in yourself. You just need a lot of patience and trial and error. And if first you don't succeed, remember to keep trying again. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will talk to you soon.